Welcome to another episode of Bargman Saturdays. And this week I decided to take a look at Back to the Jurassic, which I got in this combo pack with Kumba. Which I have to admit does raise an eyebrow for me, because Kumba's by a South African studio, while Back to the Jurassic's by a South Korean studio. I'm just going to assume that they had the same US distributor, because as far as I'm aware, the companies themselves have nothing to do with each other. But if I'm wrong about that, feel free to leave a comment, and I'll pin it. As far as interesting factoids about Back to Jurassic goes, well, originally it was released underneath the title Dino-Time back in 2012. It was going to have a US theatrical release, a rather limited one, but those plans were eventually pulled. I'm just going to assume, the film didn't see a particularly impressive box office return in South Korea or any of the other foreign markets that, saw the film, before the US was going to release it. So there's just like, the Dino movies just aren't big at the time. We're just going to pull it and forget about it. Then 2015 happened. And you might be wondering, what's so big deal about dinosaur movies in 2015? Well, that's when Jurassic World got released to much success. So in order to cash in on the potential success of that film, this film saw a release in the US market finally, in 2015, just 10 days before Jurassic World hit theaters. And of course, when they decided to release this film finally in the US market, they decided to change the name from Dino-Time to Back to the Jurassic. Because they wanted to have that Jurassic part in there for Jurassic World, I suppose. Just calling it Dino-Time, just isn't as catchy, as saying Back to the Jurassic. At least that's what I'm going with. As far as the film itself goes, I'd say it's a pretty solid film, at least for a younger audience, though I'll admit the comedy may be a bit hit or miss for you. I mean, there's some fart jokes, which, let's face it, unless you're really into pie humor, it's not going to really appeal to you, and I've been spoiled on that front with all the films I've watched aimed at kids anyway. I mean, if you can't top a dog pooping out a blind mouse out of its butt with a fart, I ain't going to be impressed, You gotta top that, or you got nothing as far as fart jokes go. You also have, fourth wall jokes, because the main character, Ernie, will frequently, do cutaways where he talks to the audience about, his feelings and what's going on. So if you're not into fourth wall jokes, you're probably not going to like this film, because that ends up being a pretty decent chunk of the humor. You then also have, smart aleck comebacks as some of the jokes as well, which, again, if you don't really enjoy watching people be mean to each other, even on a small scale, probably not going to like this film because of that reason. I know that's one of the reasons Common Sense Media, was less than thrilled with this film and gave it a 3 out of 5. They're like, it might have some decent messaging and alright animation for the time it was released in, but at the same time, it's bogged down by the fact that, you're throwing around a lot of these smart aleck remarks that, kind of get underneath our skin, because we're trying to, rate this film for young children. Outside of that, you also have some, I suppose, slapstick comedy, I might label it, considering there's one point where Ernie gets grounded by his dino mom, because, when they go back in time, a T-Rex Tyra thinks the human kids are actually her babies, and Ernie decides to wander off, and Dino Mom responds by basically laying on top of him and pinning him to the ground for the entire night. Because Ernie's like, I need to go find the key to the time travel machine because I lost it, after hiding the fact he'd found it, so they couldn't go back, immediately. Because Ernie only cares about himself. It's not until later he realizes he has to take responsibility for his actions, darn it. So yeah, you got quite a few different comedic elements going for it, and most of them work really well, if you're into the kind of humor on display. Like I said, I don't really care for the fart jokes, but the fourth wall jokes, work well enough for me, and watching someone get laid on top, being pinned to the ground by a T-Rex for a grounding, was also funny. Though, in retrospect, I do have to ask how he wasn't crushed to death as well, considering, a T-Rex would have to weigh probably several tons, considering their size. But, it's a CGI movie. I'm not really meant to think about the physics of it, right? If I had to pick things that kind of annoy me plot-wise. The fact that Time Machine works by spilling soda on it is really dumb. I mean, I don't think to myself, oh, I want to make my keyboard work better. I should just dump some soda on it. Like that's not how that works. I mean, if anything, you assume, spilling soda on the controls of a time machine would, cause you to either be sent to some random point in time, or would just break the machine altogether. Because let's face it, this stuff, if it doesn't completely ruin it, causes your keyboard to get all skunky and stuck up, and you gotta, like, wash it and all that stuff. It's just not fun. So watching characters constantly take, this high-tech machinery and just dump soda on it, kind of annoys me. I also don't like the design of the Sarcosuchus brothers. I mean, we could talk about how the Sarcosuchus and T-Rex didn't live in the same time periods, and that alone could be considered annoying, but I'm not going to gripe too much about that, because, let's face it, that tends to be a pretty common mistake when it comes to movies involving dinosaurs anyway, so I really shouldn't get that upset about it. On the other hand, the design of the Sarcosuchus is really dumb, because they decided to throw fins on there for swimming. Like, they don't have fins, they'd have tails. That'd be really powerful, because the Sarcosuchus is basically, an ancient alligator or crocodile. So, why would they have, like, little fins attached to, like, their elbows or whatnot? They wouldn't. That's a terrible design. It would never happen. And then there's the fact that leading a member of the Sarco brothers has dreadlocks, which is really distracting, because, let's face it, alligators and crocodiles shouldn't have hair. I mean, hair is a mammalian trait, so I should not see it on a freaking reptile. It just shouldn't happen. It's very distracting. Ugh. But yeah, outside of that, it tends to be a pretty well constructed movie. So it's just a few little gripes that get underneath my skin about it, though your mileage may vary. Because I know someone on Internet Movie Database gave the movie basically a 4 out of 10, and basically said it's for little kids only, nothing for adults, please don't watch. So, yeah. It's always an opinion when it comes to movies, Till next time, then. See ya.
If we don't relocate soon, we won't have a choice. With all the earthquakes and rising tar, the pickings are getting slim down here. Soon, nothing in the lower valley will survive.